From Tally to Cali.
It's time
to wake up.
Wake up!
Warchant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source.
And this is Wake Up Warchant, presented by
Vitamin Energy.
The vitamins.
The energy.
Now here's Warchant.com's Aslan Hajavandi
and Corey Clark.
Wake up! It's Wake Up Warchant, presented by Vitamin Energy. Coming up on today's show, defensive hot board dropped, and I've got a favorite name. Corey throws a new name into the mix at offensive coordinator, and recruiting creeps into the darkness as the priority quarterback of the class opts for the Gators. Wake Up Warchant. It's presented by Vitamin Energy, vitaminenergy.com. Promo code Corey Clark, please.
warchantbogo.
Buy one, get one free. Applies to more than just one, correct, Corey? You can possibly buy 5 and get 5 for free, giving you 10 boxes for the price of 5.
Yeah, I don't think it's possibly. I think that's how it works, buddy.
I love
buy
it.
10 for free. You buy 10, you get 10 for free.
Gotta love it. Holidays approaching fast. Although really late Thanksgiving this year, but that's for another podcast possibly. VitaminEnergy.com. Again, promo code warchantbogo. Buy one, get one free. 260 milligrams, all natural caffeine, some green tea extract in the extra strength varieties. I'm a half shot guy still, everybody. So even when you buy one box, just think about it. You're almost getting 4 boxes. If you buy one box, you'll get another for free. And then if you split those bottles in half, do the math, everybody. It's a great value. VitaminEnergy.com. Almost as good of a value, better value. Eye of the beholder. The 150 deal going on over at warchant.com. 1 week, $1, and then 50% off an annual membership. Some might say BOGO is 50% off, Corey. Just saying.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. Yeah, absolutely.
Just saying. Warchant.com, Ultimate Seminole Sports Source. Go over there. Check out the hot boards and such. We're going to be talking about that plenty, I assume. Maybe another name we got to add to it. We'll get to that in a second as well. But first, let's bring him in here in all glory. Corey Clark, everybody. Make some noise. What's up, Corey? How are you, man?
What's up, buddy? How are you doing? You doing all right?
Good,
Have a good weekend, I hope?
Yeah, man. Went hung out with the fam. There was a charity golf tournament back home. One of my buddies has numerous buddies have assembled and volunteered to coordinate the last few years, and it's just getting bigger and bigger every single year. I've been there the first one and the third one, but then they started doing it in the heart of November, which is football season, so I can never make it down there. But thanks to Mike Norvell and the scheduling gods, bye week in mid-November, so I trotted down to the Bay Area, and it was good, man. It was good. Other than the fact that my hometown, one of our most busy intersections, has become an absolute landfill for all the debris from the hurricanes. It's all there, Corey. It's all piled like a freaking mile high. As far as the eye can see. Not great for property values, I bet. But, again, that's maybe another podcast. How was your weekend?
All right. I got to hang out with Stephanie for a little bit. She came up. I mean, I know that's my wife.
That's cool. She gave you the opportunity to hang out. That's cool.
Yeah,
that
was nice. I was in Atlanta, obviously, and then her and her daughter flew to Toronto for the Taylor Swift concert.
Ooh, balling.
And then on the way back, stopped in Atlanta and stayed with Brady and I for Saturday night, and got back on the road Sunday. So got to see her for a little bit, hear all about the Eras tour, which I don't need to hear about anymore ever again. I'll be honest with you. But thankfully, it's over in like 3 days, and we won't have to talk about it again until inevitably the Chiefs are in the Super Bowl. Then it all will come back up again.
That's right.
Unless they've broken up by then.
Oh, don't put that into the earth. Don't put that in existence.
I mean, it's got to be. That's not that's plus 600. That's not a crazy bet. That wouldn't be a huge upset.
I'm rooting for the two kids.
I am too.
Rooting for love. Rooting for Florida State to get a big dub this weekend. It's game week. We're back, everybody. Feels like we've been gone for a long time, Corey, no?
Yeah, and also we all knew what was happening in Notre Dame, so there was no real we knew that was going to be a blowout and gross to watch. So this feels like the first game in a while. Not that we're going to break down the Charleston Southern game a whole lot. By the way, if you did care, they fought hard, Charleston Southern, in their game this weekend. Lost in overtime to a team I don't remember.
Eastern Illinois.
16-13.
Oh.
So they are 1-9 now on the season, along with Florida State.
1-10. 1-10.
They're 1-10. So is this their last game of the year?
It is. This is all the marbles, man.
They're
gonna throw the kitchen sink at us. We're ready.
Yeah. So they're 1-10. They're one of the worst. They might be the worst FCS offense in the country. And Florida State, as we all know, is the worst FBS offense in the country. So we'll see what that looks like when they share the field together.
Since we last spoke, everybody, the Defensive Hotboard 1.0 dropped over at warchant.com. Go check it out. Who's your favorite on it, Corey? I've got my favorite from the offensive Hotboard. I think Benny Arbuckle over there in Pullman, Washington, the offensive coordinator for the Cougs. Kind of like that profile, kind of like that fit, but you obviously will need to bring in an offensive line coach if you were to bring him in, because his sort of forte seems to be, maybe he's your quarterback's coach, offensive coordinator, play caller, but that's the one to me seems to make most sense, and I like the sort of upside on it. Defensively, looking at the hot board, man, they get Zach Arnett to leave Lane in Oxford. He's an analyst. I don't know if that's like Castellanos quitting on his team, but Arnett spiting his former employer, Mississippi State, and going to work for Ole Miss for pennies on the dollar. That might be a parallel, and not a lot of people like Thomas Castellanos, but I like the Zach Arnett hire because looking at that hot board, there's only one of those guys that has been really successful in his own right at the Power 4 level.
Right.
And that's Arnett, because he was the defensive coordinator for Mike Leach and Pullman. Leach took him to Starkville, and then when he unfortunately untimely passed away, Mike Leach, Arnett took over for him. Didn't do great as a head football coach, but I still think that guy probably can scheme up a defense or two. So those are the two guys I like. The recruiting thing is a total wild card with those guys, but it seems to be with everybody on the hot board. But back to you, defensive coordinator hot board. Who's your favorite name, fit, intrigue?
I'll be honest with you, Aslan. I'm going to defer to you. I don't want to give more names because I feel like people need to go pay to see the hot board. So I'm not going to drop any more breadcrumbs.
16 names that we have. I think we had 18 offensive names, and then we had 16 defensive coordinators. So
I like that. What is his current role with Ole Miss? He's an analyst.
Correct. Yeah.
I'd rather hire the Ole Miss DC because he's really good. Apparently,
Pete
now he
Golding.
got a lot of really good players.
Correct.
But they loaded up on the defensive line, and they look unlike any Ole Miss defense of probably my lifetime. But yeah, that's fine. I wrote a column, honestly, now that we're talking about this. I don't know why I said honestly, as if I'd be lying to you or that I was sharing some secret. I think the more I've thought about it, you bring up the big boy kind of Power 4, the more that's especially on defense, but really on both. That's what I'm looking for, because when you go through this, he can't afford to take chances. Peter Boulware tweeted out something that actually coincides perfectly with my column, is he's like, you can't take chances on an up-and-comer with these two coordinator spots if you're Mike Norvell. Peter Boulware, it's good to know he's still invested, still cares about the program, former Florida State great, maybe a college football Hall of Famer. If not, he should be sometime soon because he was unbelievable. But because, man, you think about the group he hired, and I kind of went through it. And I in the column I wrote a couple of times, like, look, granted I was not writing this stuff a year ago. That is all perfectly fair. But in 2019, when Mike Norvell was hired, he hired the Memphis DC, who had been the Marshall He'd been there for a year and had been the DC at Marshall for a year. Neither one of those defenses were very good. And now he's the defensive coordinator at Florida State. His OC he hired from Auburn, which was fine. But then 2 years later, the OC in name only becomes a guy you hired from Charlotte. Man, Florida State is not in the position where it can hire guys from Marshall and Charlotte. Not for these positions. I want somebody that has a history. Like, I'm watching the Georgia-Tennessee game on Saturday night. I just want somebody with a history in those environments, around those types of players, recruiting them, coaching against them. And maybe it's not a coordinator. Maybe it's a couple of position coaches. I just want dudes that have been around talent and been around big-time programs and big-time atmosphere. In your Florida State, man, people can say what they want about this program. They have always spent money on assistant coaches. When Jimbo was here and complaining about everything, he had a top 10 assistant coaching paid staff in the country. They always, and Mike Norvell certainly does too, they always take care of their coaches. I just want, look, man, say it's the UNLV guy, say it's the Tulane guy. That's fine, especially if Tulane brings the quarterback. If that guy brings his quarterback with him.
So you can just say schools, but you're not going to say the names. I like the loophole.
Right? Yeah, that
stuff,
is
Corey.
a loophole. Sorry,
But
we've definitely talked
right.
about those two guys before. That's why I brought them up. But and I did pay close attention to both of those games. They both, I think Tulane won 35-0.
Correct.
Over Navy.
Navy
So maybe
just down big, man. They were riding high in the middies about a month ago.
They can't score at home, and then so maybe you need the Tulane DC. Just bring the whole Tulane staff. And then I watched UNLV put up, I think, 41 and over 500 yards against a bad San Diego State team, but, they still scored a lot of points. So, anyway, I wouldn't be totally against something like that. You just for the sake of argument, you bring in the UNLV coordinator, but you've got to put guys on that staff. You can't have a staff where, your quarterback coach is a former tight ends coach at Memphis. Or your linebacker coach, defensive coordinator was at UCF before this. Your other guy was at UTEP before this, or TCU, or not that I know TCU played for a national title, but I would like to see some big boy programs come into this because it's different than it was in 2019. You're not selling a vision anymore. You're not selling a vision of what you're going to bring Florida State to. The vision just crashed into a mountain. You're coming off 1-9. The job is different now. The project is different. You've got to convince guys that you're going to get them to the league and you're going to be productive. And they're going to need to see a track record that's not just yours, Mike Norvell. They want to see who you hire and see if they have a track record of being around big-time programs, winning games, scoring points, and getting guys to the league. And so I think that's where he has to go, right? That's obviously you want the best coach available, but, man, you've got to – this looks like when you just strip it away and look at where most of these guys came from, whether it was Maryland, TCU, I know David Johnson was at Tennessee before that. Surtain basically was a high school coach before he was hired. Surtain might stay. He probably could stay. He's done fine. I'm not impugning what he's done. I'm just saying, does it have the look of a national championship caliber coaching staff? And in a place like this that can afford, that will pay, you can do better probably than what they have right now. So I think maybe you change the way that you hired from 2019 to now. Things have changed, and you go get some big boy guys.
I don't know, but I guess to your point earlier, though, looking at this staff last year, did they have the look of a national championship staff? I mean, they had the same resumes then as they do now, and they're on the unemployment
trust
line.
Me, that's very fair, and I pointed that out multiple times in the column. I think there's more data points now, though. They clearly don't develop their own guys well enough. They got Jared Verse. And they got Braden Fisk. And I'm not saying they didn't do work with those guys and they didn't improve them and make them better. I'm not saying that they just came in Braden Fisk did, just ready-made. Jared Verse got better. But Jared Verse had 2 sacks in his first game at Florida State against LSU. So I don't know how much better he got. He was already damn good. He was already really good. So, how much success do they get? How much developing, recruiting and identifying talent and then developing did this staff do? I just want guys that, I don't know, man, be like, yeah, he's as good as the linebacker I had on Tennessee last year. He can play. I just remember Jimbo, and I know we're going almost 20 years ago now, when he took over the Florida State offense in 2007, basically saying, yeah, the only guy that probably could have played for us is Preston Parker. It's good to know that. It's good to have that kind of perspective. And I don't know that anybody on this staff has that kind of perspective. Again, maybe David Johnson, he was at Tennessee. I know he coached Leonard Fournette, so he knows what really good players look like. But by and large, you're talking about guys that haven't been around greatness a lot until they got here in some of their cases. And Alex Atkins never developed anyone to be an NFL pick. So, yeah, I don't know. I know I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. I know that's probably not fair. I know this conversation wasn't being had last year at all. That's completely fair. But you're 1-9. You can't go back the group of 5 route, in my opinion. You can't flood this staff with group of 5 guys. It's Florida State, man. Act like it. Go hire some coaches.
And another tricky thing, too, some of these names, some of these guys that are at the Power 2 level, if you want to call it that, I guess a lot of people are calling it that. To your point, guys that have played in these big games, these big environments, usually means they've been in this sort of Power 2. They're on the, I don't know if they're so much on the coming off the tree or if they're enjoying the shade of being, under the umbrella of good programs. Like there's an Oregon guy on this list. There's a guy from Georgia. It's hard to think, you're your own man and you're not the product of Dan Lanning, his like magic, and you're not the product of Kirby Smart's magic. That's why I like Arnett. Like Arnett's kind of like a self-made guy, proved himself. So that seems to me to be probably the best name I see on this board. But there's other names out there that make you say, And
you never know. Again, I'll just keep it Florida State specific. But Jeremy Pruitt had essentially no experience.
Yeah.
He had been a full-time Alabama staff member for like a year and a half as a DB's coach, and he was almost genius level defensively. Now, again, he had a whole defense of NFL players, and he was never going to be a head coach. That was always going to be a disaster. But as just focusing on the defense, we would have thought, okay, he's a Kirby Smart, Nick Saban product. He's riding their coattails. But you do learn, just through osmosis, if nothing else, what you're trying to do defensively. You also learn what it looks like. If you have any learning ability at all, in any comprehension skills, if you're around the Alabama program from like 2000 to 2016 or 15, I don't know why I use those numbers. Let's say 2010 to 2012. You can't help but see, okay, this is what I'm looking for. These are the type of bodies. These are the type of athleticism. This is the type of mindset, competitiveness, and also you learn how to scheme against things just because you're around greatness. So, man, I hear what you're saying, but don't you think like some of that, it is going to rub off if you're around those guys? I'm basically saying,
oh, for sure.
I wouldn't call it a disqualifier if they haven't run their own defense at one of these schools. It would be preferred, but I don't think it's a disqualifier if you trust the guys you're talking to about this hire and that, oh, yeah, he's a sharp guy. He knows what he's doing. He helps a lot in game planning, and that's the truth. That's the stuff I would ask about.
Yeah, it feels like, I don't know if it's 6 in one half dozen the other, but like when you think about up and comer, you think about guy to group of 5 level, maybe being his own guy, but hasn't really gone up against the best athletes. And then, maybe the parallel to that at the power 4 level is being at the biggest level, playing against the biggest competition, but maybe you don't have the most autonomy on that defense. But to your point, like you're around it, you've been in it, like you've felt the stress, you've seen the hours that are put in to win those games and to get those players and recruit them. So it's a valuable asset as well. But again, just like Zach Arnett, just like him a little bit better than most other guys on the list. Offensive line hot board, or offensive coordinator hot board. Maybe, would you put another name on there, Corey, after Sunday's news?
What do you think, buddy? I mean, have you ever had me text you about a coach becoming available like that? Absolutely. So right before we recorded this show, Wisconsin announced, and I have no idea. I don't know if Mike Norvell's even heard. Well, he's heard of him. He's coached against him. But I don't know if it would ever come to fruition, how even likely it is. But these are the kind of things I'm talking about where you want to go, okay, is this a better hire than a guy from a group of 5 school? And I haven't even given his name yet. I'll give his name right now. So Phil Longo was fired at Wisconsin. They have the 97th scoring offense in the country, Aslan. That's not quite the type of recent resume that you want when you have the 133rd offense in the country. You are going up 36 spots, baby. You're in the top 100, but that's not the recipe you're looking for, especially when there are other guys on the list that are 11th or 14th or 8th or wherever they might be at their respective schools. The thing that intrigues me about Longo is he was, his Ole Miss offense, his last year at Ole Miss, so he's coached at Ole Miss and UNC. He was the coach at North Carolina for all the Sam Howell years and then the first Drake May year, which they were really good. I think they led the nation. In fact, I'm looking at it now. He was 3rd in the nation in passing, and they were 1st in the ACC in scoring and like 5th, 8th in the country in scoring with Drake May. And before that, he coached Sam Howell, so he's not just a one-quarterback wonder, like some would argue the current offensive coordinator at Florida State is. And not only that, at Ole Miss, in 2018, this wasn't that long ago, his offense was 9th in the country in total offense. They averaged over 500 yards per game. It is an air raid. They do go up tempo. You guys remember the North Carolina games from a few years ago. But you also remember, I know they lost those games. They were lost because of the North Carolina defense. But I like that he has a track record. He coached at Sam Houston State before he got the Ole Miss job. He immediately proved he belonged at that level. He coached DK Metcalf. He coached A.J. Brown at Ole Miss. And then North Carolina, he coached 2 NFL quarterbacks and a lot of NFL running backs and skill guys. Like, that's the kind of – if it's not him or not, those are the kind of resumes I'm looking for. Guys that have been around good to great college football players that can develop quarterbacks, can scheme up what quarterbacks do well, and they can develop and recruit and identify. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I just think there's something to that. And so, yeah, he immediately – in Corey Clark's hot board – once he became available, even though, because it's Wisconsin, man, he didn't go to Oklahoma State and suck. He went to Wisconsin, tried to bring the air raid to Wisconsin without any receivers because it's Wisconsin. And then his quarterback was Tyler Van Dyke, who we all remember well, and he got hurt the first game of the year, right?
Yeah.
So he's been with a backup quarterback the whole year. That's not a recipe for success when you're running a quarterback-driven offense. So they have not been good. But I feel like that's the anomaly, right? That's the outlier, these 2 seasons at Wisconsin. Not the 6 or 7 seasons, well, really the 15 seasons that preceded that, but the 6 or 7 seasons at the D1 level, the high-level FCS level that preceded that, because his North Carolina offenses and Ole Miss offenses were all very, very good by every measure, every metric. And that's the kind – he's 56. To me, he seems more like a sure thing at a place like Florida State. Obviously, it wasn't a sure thing in the big plotting Midwest. But at a place like Florida State, you should have access to good quarterback play and a whole bunch of receivers and running backs, skill guys. I feel like that's a much safer bet than somebody from a Group of 5 school. Doesn't mean it will work, and the Group of 5 guy might be the next Newt Rockne. But I'm just saying it seems like a safer bet, that kind of resume, whether it's Phil Longo or not, something like that. Did I sell you on him? I'm sure I didn't.
Yeah, let me try to sell you now on the Corner Pocket Bar and Grill, 2475 nice. Appalachia Parkway, cptallybar.com, the website. Half-pound Black Angus beef burger, only $8.99 today from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Comes with a side dish of your choice. That's the Monday lunch special. On Tuesday, it's tacos all day, soft shell, hard shell, chicken or steak, and then trivia at 7 p.m. Bingo going down 7 p.m. on Thursdays. Cash prizes. 3 rounds, Corey? 4 rounds, 3 rounds, 2 rounds of bingo on Thursday? Cash money?
I think it's 4 rounds. Woo! I think it's 4 rounds of $250 each.
Woo!
Yeah, big-time stuff.
Let's do it. And then don't forget Friday, meet and greet over at the Corner Pocket Bar and Grill with Jeff Cameron, Corey Clark, maybe some other dignitaries from the Warchant brand shaking hands and hanging out with you folks. That starts at 5 o'clock, goes till about 6, but you know Corey and Jeff, they like you folks. They hang out a little bit longer, but after 6, that's when, just love you guys. Love reading your stuff, Corey. Love listening to Jeff, and just keep it moving. Keep it moving. They've got places to go. They've got families too, everybody. Come on out. The Corner Pocket Bar and Grill, cptallybar.com, the website, 2475 Appalachia Parkway. We're back. It's Wake Up Warchant presented by Vitamin Energy. VitaminEnergy.com. Promo code WarchantBOGO. Buy one, get one free. Use it. Again, Corey, I think, 16 names, I think, defensively on the hot board, the hot board 1.0, which, again, not a definitive list and still preliminary. Because, listen, there's games to be played for the rest of the season. We'll see what happens with some of these coaches. Maybe they want to end up staying where they're at, or maybe they're that much more enticed by coming to Florida State. But, we're talking there's 34 guys on this list, and I don't know how many are likely. There's some top contenders, the way we break it down over on warchant.com. It's there's top contenders, and then there's long shots. And I would say, it's kind of balanced. I think the offensive coordinator thing seems to be more balanced in terms of top candidates and long shots. Defensively, it seems to be fewer early contenders and then a lot of long shots. But the one kind of through line with most of these guys, Corey, and it's the debate raging on the message boards right now, is just not a lot of, quote, recruiting prowess history in the Southeast.
Right.
And I was wondering, how much of that is in your pie chart? How much of that gives you pause, or it factors into the way that you're valuing and evaluating some of these names that keep coming across Ira and Gene's iPhones and Pixel phones?
Yeah, look, man, I think that matters. Again, we don't know exactly what that entails as far as being a great recruiter anymore. But yeah, man, here's the deal: if you go and hire a Group of 5 coordinator, especially from, again, I'm just going to use UNLV as an example. That guy might be awesome. He's certainly done great for UNLV. But what kind of is that going to be a needle mover in Tallahassee? Is that going to be a needle mover in the ACC? Is that going to be a needle mover for kids in the state of Florida to want to come play for a guy that had a couple of years of success at UNLV? Or are you going to have to prove it for a year? Like, that's the thing, man. How it should work, it sort of worked at Tallahassee with Norvell, but not really, not to the extent we all hoped it would. When you prove that you have a lot of success, kids want to come play for you. So he would have to go prove it at this level, at least for a year, and run a fun, up-tempo, high-scoring offense, and then more skill guys are going to want to play for you, you think. Or you got to throw a lot of money at them. You know, I don't know the weight, the balance of what's more important. I would assume, you know, you're not going to be throwing $1 million at all these skill guys, so I would assume it'd be nice to have both. You'd have some money to spread around, and you'd also have, some history and production to tout. But that's fair, man. I do think, and I also think maybe recruiting becomes more of a factor again, like those kind of ties, if the house deal pushes through finally when we can stop talking about it, and there is like a quote-unquote salary cap. And there will, I don't even know how it will be enforced. Is the NCAA going to start punishing you if guys get NIL deals outside of the $20 million?
That's the rumor. Like they're going to actually put in some real
okay, well then if that's the case, then
deterrent.
Theoretically you're going to have to need some good recruiters again. So yeah, that should be important. If you're here for the long haul, you need guys that can attract talent and develop talent. And I do think that's why, I mentioned Surtain, that he was a high school coach. He was at the Dolphins for a year, but that guy, I mean, his name rings out, man. Not only is his kid like the best corner in the world right now, he's going to be an all-pro, and he signed a huge deal. Everybody knows the name Patrick Surtain, but what he did in South Florida at American Heritage, even though he didn't have a great coaching record, I do think that's a guy, if I'm Mike Norvell, I keep him on my staff if he wants to be here.
Yeah, I like the high school background. I think it's a plus. I mean, you're really
especially
developing
at a place
guys.
like that, right?
Yeah.
At a place like that. I don't want a guy that was a high school coach at my high school. That doesn't do me any good at all. But a guy that not only coaches and wins a lot of games in high school, but coached a ton of great players. Again, you're just around it. You know what it looks like. Again, this is not it's going to sound like a shot. I guess it is a shot. And Adam Fuller did end up coaching a lot of NFL players. How many guys did he coach that went to the NFL before he got to Florida State? I think maybe a couple, maybe. But probably not many at Wagner or Sacred Heart or Marshall. Like, he just wasn't around it. And not that he couldn't coach. You saw what he could do with really good players, right? We all were alive this time last year when his defense was the reason this team was still undefeated. But Florida State got those guys. Adam Fuller didn't get those guys. You know what I'm saying? Like, the chance to go play at Florida State was the reason they came. I don't know how many guys came because I want to go learn under Adam Fuller. I want to go be the next so-and-so. Like, Peter Boulware wanted to come because he wanted to play for Mickey Andrews, because he wanted to be, T-Buck came because he wanted to be the next Dion. He wanted to follow. That wasn't really happening with Adam Fuller, I don't think. But there are guys out there that have a track record where you can point to recent success and say, this guy gets you to the league. He wins games and he gets you to the league. And I just think that's why, whether it's from whether he has Southern football recruiting connections or not, granted that could be important. I just think it's more important to have a track record, like a legitimate track record, because Florida State isn't a starter program. This isn't where you earn your stripes. Your stripes should already be on you by the time you get to Florida State. In most cases, 2019, I get it. He was up against time. Time was a real big factor back then. Time was of the essence. Also, you had to pay Willie $25 million, and also Mike Norvell's name didn't ring out, man.
Nope.
It didn't. I know people are going to laugh at this probably, but Mike Norvell is a famous coach now. And his perfect season was last year. So it's not like coaches, I don't think that many coaches would be hesitant. Now, you're going to have to give them a multi-year deal. But I don't think that many coaches would be hesitant coming to play for Mike Norvell, because they've seen the turnaround he already performed at Florida State. They're not just hoping that this guy can win at Florida State. They know he can.
Like coaches or players?
Coaches.
Okay.
And then if you get the coaches you need and want, then the players, even if they don't necessarily believe 100% in the direction of the program, because 1-9 is 1-9, they see, this guy coached at Tennessee for, I'm not going to use them again. This guy coached at Georgia for 4 years. These are the guys he coached. Okay, That's very appealing to me. I think that makes more than just getting guys that are from the state of Florida necessarily. That was a long-winded answer. I apologize. By the way, I know Phil Longo just got fired. I'm not going to sit here and say he had a great year in 23. He didn't. But they were 5-2 at one point, and then they've lost 3 in a row to Penn State.
This year or last? 24?
This year. Okay. This year. They were 5-2, even with a backup quarterback. Yeah. Their last 3 games were Penn State,
top 5
at
team.
Iowa, and Oregon.
Number 1 team in the country.
Number 1, number 3, and then at Iowa. So, he didn't score a lot of points in those games. So, still, so yes, the offense isn't what we would like your offense to be if you're hiring a new OC, but just like you got to believe in Norvell because of what he did last year, I'm on the Longo train. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm on the Longo train. Get a guy in here that's used to scoring a lot of points and putting up a lot of yards, and give him some real athletes and not the the cow-fed, beef-fed skill position players out in the middle of the country.
Yeah, pretty interesting. They lost. They Iowa put 42 on them.
Yeah.
And that's Luke Fickell's calling card. But then he did hold Penn State to 28. They held Oregon to 16. You probably got to beat the number 1 team in the country when they're in your backyard.
No, not great. You threw for 96 yards. It was gross. But again, that guy wasn't supposed to be playing for them this year.
Yeah. On last week's show, I was talking about who are the good coordinators historically, or how are they kind of viewed. I don't know how many of them really are coordinators by trade. There's certain brands, I guess. There's like the Brent Venables guy. Like if Brent Venables ends up, becoming a defensive coordinator, he got let go at Oklahoma. That's a guy.
Yeah. Go get him. Get him.
Absolutely.
Go get him.
But again, I think if you get yourself like an Arnett or an Arbuckle, if you get those guys, AA, Arn Anderson, represent. Like you get those guys that have a good vision and a proven track record, then I think if you surround them with good like position coaches that have good relationships with whether it's high school programs or just certain parts of this country, and they know where pipelines exist that are fruitful, like that's the best way to go about putting this whole thing back together, if you will, because I don't know if you can find a coordinator that's going to, I don't think it can be everything for you. I know everybody wants them to be like the questions last week were like, would you rather have a top 5 coordinator who's a top 50 play caller, or would you rather have a top 5 play caller who's a top 50 recruiter? And it's, I don't know how you can really balance all that great, and I don't think you can. I think you get a really good coordinator that just knows how to scheme up things and has a proven track record like an Arnett, like an Arbuckle, and then you surround them with good position coaches that have the relationship building stuff, and that's the best way to do this. So I hope, and I don't think Mike thinks he has to, check out every box off with the coordinator hires. Just like I need to have the guy that if we give him the right recipes, like he can cook, and then that'll be my job as the head coach. That's no longer calling plays, is to get the right position coaches and then to formulate the best attack to go get these kids from high school and then some of these portal pieces that they're going to need in the immediate term. Yeah,
man, that's true. I think, when you look at, I'm trying to even think about the dynasty years, like who was considered the great recruiters on the staff. I don't think, Mickey Andrews and Mark Richt were considered unbelievable recruiters. They ran the offense that people wanted to come play for, our defense in Mickey Andrews' case. And you did have other position coaches that were great at it.
Chuck Amato.
Yeah, Chuck Amato, John Eason at on the other side for the wide receivers until he left for I think he left for Georgia. Yeah, I think he left for Georgia. I think he might have left before that with Brad Scott to South Carolina, but I could be wrong. That might have been when Jeff Bowden took his spot. But yeah, man, I think that you want. I want a guy. Let's stay on the defense. I want a guy that's a defensive coordinator, whether he's a real personable dude or is great in the room. I don't know if Mike Elko is a great recruiter. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know that he comes into a living room and just dazzles you. I also don't know if that matters at A&M. He'll dazzle you with the cash he just threw in your face. But I know he knows good defense, and I know he knows what he's looking for his defense. And I also know that he knows, okay, this guy is a badass. Like, this guy's going to be an NFL player. This guy, and he could probably have a really good idea of that when the kid's 18 or 19 years old. And he can sell his success and his history to say, look, man, if you stick with me, I promise you, if you do what I ask you to do and you keep working hard and stay healthy, Well, look at what I did with these other guys. Look at this track record. That's a recruiting tool better than just, oh, this guy knows my high school coach. Like, so again, it's, Adam Fuller, did he recruit well? He's a perfectly fine coach. Like, again, they were awesome last year on that side of the ball, but they weren't his guys, if that makes sense. And I don't know that Florida, Renardo Green was here before he got here, right?
He developed Jarian and Shaheem, and he got the best out of Akeem, and I guess Randy went and got him Tatum Bethune, but Deloach was a guy that they didn't recruit, but they developed, and
So I think like Fabian Lovett you could call him his guy, even though he didn't recruit him. Like I'm just saying,
Patrick Payton.
Not many of these guys came to play for Adam Fuller. They contributed at a high level on that team last year. He coached them up. They were his players. But as we've seen, when those players left, what the flip happened? He did not replenish the defensive roster the way an elite defensive coordinator at a place like Florida State could and should. And that goes for the guy on the other side of the ball, but he didn't fire himself. So they didn't take advantage of the success they had. They didn't recognize, okay, this guy can't play. Why is he on our team? Why is this our linebacker situation? Why is this our safety situation? Is this really the best Florida State can do at defensive end? Like, there just wasn't the development from within. And so, yes, he was great when he had Jared Verse, and I'm not dismissing the role that Adam Fuller played. I'm not just saying he rolled the ball out there like Roy Williams and just said go score points and win games or go keep them from scoring points in his case. There was a lot that went into it, and he was a very good coach when he had good players. The problem with half of your job is building a roster full of more good players. And he didn't do it. For whatever reason, the name Adam Fuller or the prospect of playing on this defense didn't ring out across the hills like it should have after what he did the last 2 years, and he's left with this. And not only that, Aslan, most of these dudes, the best players on his defense, keep in mind the defense that just gave up 50 points, they're all about to leave. And there's nothing coming behind them that you're really excited about. There's some DBs, some young DBs, great. There's nothing in the front seven that you're absolutely convinced are going to be big-time players. That's not acceptable at Florida State. And I think I don't know why that didn't happen. It's not like Adam Fuller doesn't recognize good players. Maybe good players don't recognize Adam Fuller. I don't know where the disconnect was. But in everything I just said, absolutely everything I just said can go for the offensive line too, because that's even more of a debacle. So those guys didn't replenish like you're supposed to at an elite school. Like Clemson's lost guys. They've lost a bunch of guys, and they don't even use the portal. And look at them, man. They have they're what are they, 8-2?
Should be 7-3.
Well, what are you going to do? Pitted there. Yeah. But they've won 8 games again. They won 9 games last year in a down year. They've won 8 games again this year. They're not great. They're not going to win a national title. Probably not going to make the playoff. But they're still having a decent to good season, but a great season compared to what Florida State's doing. So I just think that you've got to go get guys now that, again, it's a shot. I'm sorry. But the more I thought about it, especially I don't know why it occurred to me watching the Tennessee-Georgia game, but it did. It's like, man, this is big boy football. Florida State, North Carolina, nothing looks like this. Nothing looks like this on that side of the ball. It just doesn't. There aren't big-time players, and there aren't guys coming behind them either. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why it wasn't replenished, but it wasn't. And you've got, and it's just, if you're going to come play at Florida State, if you're one of a 5-star kid that's going to, say no to the SEC and playing in environments like that every week to come play at Florida State, maybe you don't want to play for a guy that doesn't have a great long track record. Maybe you got to bring in somebody that or are convinced is going to get you to the league if he recruits you. Because it's not fair. Adam Fuller was very good. He's better at his job than I am at my job. All that is granted. He just had an undefeated season. But by God, man, where is the talent on this roster next year on that side of the ball? There's not identifying, developing, and there's not evaluating, identifying, and developing going on at elite level on the offensive line clearly, and on the and receiver room, and then on the defense as a whole. It's just not a lot there. And there should be there. You're in year 5 at Florida State. So Don't make that mistake again. Let Adam Fuller go earn his stripes at a North Carolina or at NC State. Prove that he can go develop guys and put them in the league. Then bring them. Don't go from Marshall and Memphis to Florida State. Don't go from Charlotte to Florida State. You just don't do it. Go get some real play. Go get some coaches that have been in it. Like my man Phil Longo. My guy, all he does is score points, Aslan, except for the last 2 years where they didn't score a lot.
Much more to talk about. Final break. We're coming back right after this. We're back. It's Wake Up Warchant presented by Vitamin Energy. VitaminEnergy.com. Promo code WarchantBogo. Warchant BOGO. Visit, purchase, enjoy. You keep referencing the Tennessee-Georgia game. Our guy Kirby shouted out the Athens faithful for their performance in that game. So the crowd really brought it. So I wonder how much of that is affecting your whole prism of big boy football needing to be a part of this rebuild, whether it's the people that have been around it or trying to aspire to be that level once again. How much existential doom are you feeling right now, Corey? Kirk Cignetti gets a 8-year, $72 million extension. Wisconsin's out here firing their coordinator midseason, year 1.5. And you just see all these, Doak's only going to have 68,000 people in it. There's a thread. Everyone's really mad now. For some reason, they just found out that Doak's no longer going to have 80,000 after all this construction in there.
Right.
And I looked up, I'm like, well, Camp Randall's probably only got 65. That's fine. And nope, Camp Randall's got 80. How much of that's factoring into any anxiety? Maybe not you, but let's project. How much of the anxiety you think that Florida State fans are feeling is part of the existential gloom of being in this conference right now, while everybody else seems to be having big, shiny stadiums and throwing this kind of money at a coach after 10 games. At least we had, a 13-1 season before we backed the Brinks truck up to our coach.
But Alabama was breathing down your neck.
Yeah, you had to.
Nobody was coming after Cignetti, I don't think.
It's not your fault, Michael Alford. It's not your fault.
It's not like Cignetti. I don't even know who they were bidding against. I mean, obviously he was going to get a substantial raise. He's had an all-time year there, but I don't know that the Jets were coming. So it was an odd decision to make, but good for them. I hope they beat Ohio State. I'm not counting on it.
Yes,
but I hope they do. I think it's fair for Florida State fans to wonder where they fit in modern-day college football. I just think, guys, and I know I said everything I just said over the last 35 or 40 minutes or whatever. Last year, you were a top 5, top 3 program in the country and undefeated. And you had one guy on your defensive line that is probably going to be the defensive rookie of the year. The other guy, Braden Fisk, their teammates, he might be the defensive rookie of the year. Keon Coleman might have 1,000 yards receiving, and if he can get back healthy. Johnny Wilson's playing for the Eagles. He might be in the Super Bowl. Renardo Green is getting serious run for the 49ers. So it's not like this. You haven't been exposed to great football in a while. It was last year. It can turn around quickly, but I get it because it's such a bad year, Aslan. It's such an awful season. Just in a historically bad season, out of nowhere. So much so that I might have been watching the Clemson-Pitt game. And they showed, they said, who are the only 2 teams in the last 10 years to win the ACC other than Clemson? And it was Pitt in 21, maybe?
Yeah, Kenny Pickett.
And Florida State last year. And then, of course, that started the discussion of, I think it was McDonough asking McElroy, have you ever seen a team drop off like this? And, of course, they had a 3 or 4 minute discussion about Florida State's pitfall, but that's to be expected. It's so unbelievable. Illogical that, of course, they were talking about in the middle of a good ACC game because it's just it's I don't even know it defies belief. But it's Florida State. You're still going to have one of the nicer stadiums in the country. It won't be as big as Penn State, Ohio State. Sure, fine. It'll be a really nice stadium. You still are Florida State. You're still located in Florida. You're going to have a lot of talent. I think any dread that might show up is just the dread of not knowing what the future is as far as the conference.
Yeah.
Look, man, if this program, if and when it gets into the Big Ten, or if they just develop 2 huge super leagues and Florida State's a part of that, which you'd have to imagine it would be. It'd be crazy if it wasn't. It'll be fine. It's up there. It's a big boy. I don't know how many programs have won a national championship in the last 40 years. I don't know how many have won more than 3. but I think it's probably like 4 schools total. So you're one of, 5 schools in the last 40 years to win multiple national championships? And they didn't come in the black and white era. Like one was 10 years ago, and you were just undefeated last year. So I hope that's why I'm really interested in these hires. I would really like him to go get himself some big-name hires, or at least from some big-time schools. Because there is, and I said it on the last show, there does seem to be a lot of self-hate among Florida State fans right now about how bad the program is. Can it turn around? We're doomed forever. And it's like
self-loathing. Isn't that better than
self-loathing? Yeah, self-loathing's better. Then I just want it to be proven. No. This is a destination job. This is a destination job, man. This is or it's a high rung on a ladder, a climb to the top. This is not where the linebackers coach from East Carolina should come. Not right away. Go be the linebackers coach at Alabama. Go be a DC at Alabama. Go be a DC at East Carolina and be awesome. Then you can come be the linebackers coach, something like that. Yeah. This isn't. You don't need.
Lincoln Riley was a OC at ECU, so let's let's show some respect to the Pirates.
But right, and where was he? Then Oklahoma hired him.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but he was the OC. He wasn't a position coach.
By the way, John Eason went to South Carolina. You're right. First.
Okay, there you go for Brad Scott. Yep. And then it opened the door for Jeff Bowden. And then he went. I think he went to Georgia after that to coach with Mark Richt when Richt left after 2000. By the way, he is a great character in that book I've talked about before. The
Bobby and the Barbarians.
Saint Bobby and the Barbarians. He's a great. I say character. It's him. It's a nonfiction book, but he's really good in that. Just the way he coached and talked to those receivers. But yeah, I think Florida State's going to be fine. I said it 5 years ago. It will get better. Florida State won't be down forever. And then they went undefeated last year and won the ACC. Like, it will turn around. It can turn around quicker. And what really helps Aslan, legitimately, and I wrote this in the column, is the administration cares. You know how much it means to them, and they are devoted to making sure it's good, that the football program is good. And as long as there is a will, then eventually at a place like Florida State there will be a way. That's how it works, man. If you're going to be able to have the resources and have the devotion that this administration and this fan base has to this program, it will turn back around. So it's just a matter of when, but it will turn back around. Hopefully next year, when Longo is just dialing it up. Does Van Dyke have any eligibility left? Can he come?
What about Tommy Castellanos? You want any clarification? You want to double down? A lot of people, people didn't like that. People didn't like that at all.
Well, especially because you made it its own YouTube clip.
I did not do anything of that nature.
The Warchant brand.
I look out for us.
I
look out for us. I don't leave us susceptible.
Look, I think the way I'd frame it right now when it comes to Castellanos is he is much more, and I think I framed it like this last week. He is more of a sure thing than what you got on your roster right now, right? Right?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
What would you have beaten Duke if he was your quarterback?
Yes.
Yep, me too. You probably beat Boston College. You definitely beat Memphis if that's your quarterback. Are you going to win an ACC title with him? Don't know, probably not. But you wouldn't be 1-9 with him like you are with these guys. That's not their fault. They're freshmen and they're young. But as we go into next season, if your choices are Brock Glenn with all this just everything that's been thrown at him, Luke Kromenhoek, who right now can't look over a rush, or Castellanos, who's played in 25 college games and won his fair share and accounted for 48 touchdowns and not that many turnovers, you take Castellanos. Doesn't mean he's good. Doesn't mean I'm advocating for that. I'm saying if he's the only one out there, yeah, man, I don't know how that's even controversial. Yeah. So what, Brock Glenn transfers? Oh, well. Look, man, there is absolutely, positively no guarantee that Brock Glenn will ever in his life be as good as Thomas Castellanos is right now. And I don't think Castellanos is that good. Let me clarify that. But he is a known. These two guys are complete unknown, but the way they played quarterback, again, through no fault of their own, the way they played quarterback the last 5 weeks has been the worst quarterback play in the United States. So how could you say that a guy that's at least average-ish or a little above average that also can eliminate a pass rush or at least slow it down, wouldn't be an upgrade.
It's a non-starter. Yeah, just like not even receptive to it at all.
Yeah, I would not understand that. But I'm not saying concentrate everything on Castellanos. There are other portal guys out there. Hopefully, whatever coordinator you bring in, number one, you're giving him the keys, but you're also letting him he'll have his quarterback that he would like to bring with him, that he believes in, that he knows can run his system. That would be awesome. That's all much more preferred. I'm saying in the current state, if Castellanos was available right now to play for Florida State these next 2 weeks, if you had him against Florida, your chances of winning the game improve.
Exponentially.
From, I don't know, 12% to 25%,
Minimum.
but they still improve because he's better than these two guys are right now, this moment in November of 2024. Talk to me again in October of 2025 or 2026. I would absolutely grant you that I might be saying something completely different. But right now, it's not close. He's at best adequate. We don't know if these two guys are going to be adequate. Might also be awesome. And I'll keep saying that till the cows come home. By the way, what about this name, Aslan, for defensive coordinator?
Bill Belichick.
Not bad, right?
No.
No, I think I've said him before. I'm all about the guy at Colorado.
Oh, Robert Livingston.
That dude, we all watched that Colorado defense last year. It was awful. It was one of the worst groups in the United States. It was just an awful collection of talent. They had Travis Hunter, a couple of Florida State kids, and nothing else, and they got shredded every game. This year, they're the reason they're winning. Like, look at those scores, man. I know they put up a ton against Utah late, but Utah couldn't. And I know they were on their backup quarterback. But the biggest difference, Shedeur Sanders was really good last year, and he had a bunch of weapons last year. They just couldn't stop people. Now they're winning games because of their defense. That guy has achieved a remarkable turnaround, and he was a long time. I think he was with the Bengals, right?
Correct.
For like 6 or 7 years.
Correct.
Yeah. And that's, hey man, credit to Dion on that front, right? Like, that's a great hire. I know he has connections in the NFL, but because it wasn't like this guy was the DC for the Bengals. He was he was the DB's coach for the Cincinnati Bengals. Dion goes and hires him, gives him a job as a defensive coordinator, replaces Charles Kelly, which was obviously a bad hire, but then made a really good hire to bring this guy in. That's exceptional stuff, man. I don't know how Dion knew about him, like who tipped him off. Like, no, this guy's the real deal, but he is. And the reason I bring him up is because people might be saying, well, why would he leave Colorado? They're on the climb. They might be in the playoff. Legitimately, they might be a playoff team. Well, I just don't foresee Dion being there next year. I could be wrong. I just don't foresee him being there next year. Not when I see on my ESPN, will Deion Sanders be coaching the Cowboys with Stephen A. Talking about it for 10 minutes. So I do think Dion is not long for Colorado. He might be in the NFL because that's where his kid is going, and that's where Travis Hunter is going. But, if that guy's on the open market, man, I'm all about making a run at him. And Florida State, again, is in a position where it is much more appealing to be the DC at Florida State than the DC at Colorado in every other year except this one.
Do we let bygones be bygones if Dion goes to the NFL and he hand delivers Livingston to Norvell?
If he says this is the guy, if he tells Livingston you need to go to Florida State, and help turn my alma mater around, absolutely,
okay,
absolutely. In fact, Dion, do it, man, do it. Travis Heisman is about to be holding the Travis Hunter. I'm going to start calling him Travis Heisman. He's going to be holding the Heisman in a month. You stole him from us. And I say us because we would have gotten to see him play live for the last 30 games or whatever. It would have been unbelievable.
Nice.
And instead, he went to Jackson and then he went to Colorado. And you stole him from us. You stole him from your alma mater. So to repay that debt, I don't think Dion thinks like this, by the way. I'm going to go ahead and go on record and say he doesn't. I think he thinks Florida State still owes him a debt, and he might not be wrong considering what he did for the dynasty when it started. But still, that would be a really nice like gift basket. Like, here you go. I'm going to tell this guy to he's not coming with me to the Cowboys. He's going to go back to Tallahassee.
By the way, Colorado last year, 127th in total defense, 121st in scoring defense. This year, 59th and 51st.
Not bad, right? That's it. I mean, people might be, you don't want the 51st ranked guy. Watch that team play compared to what they were. That's another thing is like, yeah, the numbers are the numbers. He's improved them by 75, which is a huge upgrade.
Well, that's what you want to do for this offense, right? I mean, your offense is in the 120s, 130s, and everything.
Yeah, just get it into the top 50, man, which shouldn't be that hard at Florida State playing in the ACC. But, this guy, because, again, he's got Travis Hunter. I don't know how many of those other guys are, surefire NFL dudes. Not many. Not on that side of the ball, I mean. And he's got a nose guard that's one of his best players that's 5'11", 290. Just imagine him with real 4- and 5-star talent in depth, because Colorado still doesn't have a ton of depth because they brought in so many transfer guys. It's remarkable for him to come into a place that he didn't coach any of those guys before, obviously, and they were all new too. And then they become, I guess that's a little bit above average defense in a real conference. Is really remarkable. It's really impressive, and I would have a lot of faith in him that he could turn Florida State back around very quickly if he can do it at Colorado.
Going a little long on a Monday.
Sorry, guys.
Speaking of dread, the slow march of gloom that you're going to lose your quarterback, which is going to be replaced probably by the Carter Smith guy, it sounds like. But Tramel Jones on Sunday evening committed to Florida.
That's a weird decision,
I don't
right?
get this. What is... I mean, I
Because
guess they
it's
beat
not
LSU. They just came off a big win against LSU, I guess. But how is that place, how are they out recruiting and whatever? We'll see how it all works out in 3 years, where these kids are at, where they're producing. But how is that a more marketable, friendlier, cushier landing spot than Tallahassee? I don't get it.
What's weird about it, to me, honestly, is that and I'm not one of these guys that's like, they're probably paid him more. Anytime Florida State would lose a recruit, the bag man came. Yeah. I'm not one of those guys, but it just makes no sense from a career perspective if you're him, because Lagway looks pretty good, and Lagway said the reason he's at Florida is Napier, so Napier's there at least one more year, which means Lagway's there for at least one more year.
So you're telling Brock Glenn to take some clues here? Let administration know that,
No. I'm saying that's why I'm saying I don't think Brock Glenn is scaring anybody away.
I know.
Lagway, you would think would. You're guaranteeing yourself you won't play for another 2 years until year 3. Probably, right? Lagway's probably going to be there at least 2 more years. If he's good enough, he might leave after this 3rd year to go to the league, or Napier might get fired. The only way Lagway isn't the starter in 2026 is if Napier's been fired. And if Napier's been fired, then where does that leave you as a high school recruit quarterback anyway? You signed on with this guy, and then he's been fired, so are you back on the open market again? So that's why I wonder. It just doesn't make sense. But it's fine. Again, he's a free agent. He'll be a free agent this time next year, but he's not going to play for 2 years. That's what I said. It's not that it doesn't make sense that he chose Florida over Florida State. Well, Florida's better than Florida State. Florida just beat LSU. And they hung with Georgia. This team would lose to Georgia by 1 million. So it is a better program. It's a better team in 2024 than Florida State is, no doubt. But for your career, why go to Florida at all when they have one of the most hyped young quarterbacks in the country? There's 1 million other schools or 100 other schools that don't have hyped up young freshman quarterbacks that you're going to have to sit behind. That's why you could go learn from a year under Graham Mertz. And then you could be a starter as a redshirt freshman. It's odd that he would go choose to absolutely be a backup for the next 2 years, maybe the next 3 years.
Yeah, and apparently Solomon Thomas, the lone 5-star, still committed to Florida State, was down in Gainesville as well. Got to watch that win. Yeah, Brian Kelly not working out great in Baton Rouge so far.
No,
2 10-win seasons in the year 1 and 2, but this year, talk about throwing money, getting it right. He put all of his chips in getting the right defensive coordinator, and he did not get the right defensive coordinator. I don't feel like, Corey.
No, he didn't. It doesn't seem that way. But then it's also are they going to fire him? Is he that even? I mean, it's a weird school. They do a lot of weird things, but that would seem. I mean, Brian Kelly's a good coach. That's undeniable, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if he's elite. I don't know if he's Kirby Smart good. But I would say over the last 15 years, if you're listing off the best coaches in college football, you wouldn't run off too many names until you got to him. I mean, he's been good for 15 years. And yet, it's like the NFL. That's what this sport is. Well, it's already become that, but that's what it's going to continue to be. It's like a couple of down years or one down year, and all of a sudden Andy Reid's got to go. Like, remember, Andy Reid was fired, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Eagles let him go.
Yeah, the Eagles were pretty good. His whole time there, they were pretty darn good, and they let him go. That's how it would. Like LSU, yeah, they could maybe fire Brian Kelly if he goes 8-4 next year. He probably will be fired. And it's like, good grief, man. He's a really good coach, and he's proven, and he's stable. He's consistent. That's my issue with the current head coach of Florida State. As good as I think he was last year, he won the National Coach of the Year. As much as I appreciate the turnaround, I don't know, man. That's what still gives me pause as we wrap up this show. What a weird thing to save till the end. Is that the great ones don't have, typically, the great ones don't have seasons like this. They find a way. When they have not a great roster, if they don't, they still find a way to be competitive. They still find a way to salvage 6 or 7 wins at the very least. My man's about to go 2-10.
Yeah. It's crazy being at that golf tournament with all my buddies. You know, like, oh, you're here because Florida State's not playing a game. I'm like, yeah, that's right. They're like, so what's going on? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, stop asking. I'm like, I do not know. And they're so. I was thinking about when I used to just post on the message boards, Corey, like before I actually interned for Warchant when I was a student. Like I'd think of these like posts and I'd meticulously craft out a message board post, and you might not get a lot of engagement with it because like people need to be on the same wavelength as you to want to hop in a thread and hop aboard your soapbox and go down the hill with you. And you've done it a few times on the show where I'm just like, yeah, I get it, man. We're not really. It's a very bad season, but there's times where you would be like visibly upset with how bad this season is. And I've never been at that point. Like, I'm not happy by any stretch. Don't get me wrong, everybody. Like, but I realize this season is beyond repair and it's horrible. And I get it. But being around like a bunch of my friends I only group chat with on a text message, when I'm like, yeah, it's been a bad season. They look at me like I've got 3 heads. Like, what do you mean it's been a bad season? They're like, it's an embarrassment. They're like, this is horrible. I cannot believe it. Like, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know. There was a father who has a kid that's like all county in Pinellas County, and he wants his kid to go to Florida State. He's like, but he's not going to be there next year. I'm like, he's going to be there next year in Norvell. He's like, I don't think so. I'm like, they can't afford to get rid of him. And he's like, all right, well, we'll see if we can get him up there for a camp. And it's bizarre just where we're at. And I think there's a certain time of, I don't know, in your life, in your week, where like you might let the gravity of just how bad the season has hit you. I just, it all came at me at once, and I'm just like, guys, I'm off the clock. Not trying to talk about this stuff, but that's all they all wanted to know.
Well, that's how it works, man. I've had a lot of conversations about Florida State over the last 6 weeks about how bad it is. And it was funny. I was hanging out with some friends on Friday night, and one of them is a diehard Michigan fan. And I was like, man, he goes, Florida State. I was telling him, I was like, you don't understand, man. Florida State. He's like, what happened? And I was like, their offense is just abysmal. That's the biggest reason. He goes, well, it can't be worse than Michigan's. I'm like, well, that's where you're wrong. Because I know you think you have the worst offense in the United States, and there's good reason to think that. But you don't, because Florida State literally has the worst offense in the United States. And his eyes were raised, like, wow, really? I'm like, yeah, man. They average 13 points per game. They average less than you did in basketball in high school, which is true. The guy I was talking to averaged like 17 a game his senior year of high school. He's a good player. He had some bounce. So that's what I'm saying. Like, people, it hits you sometimes that people are going to have disappointing seasons. Like, this is a disappointing season for Florida. And they're used to it, though. They've had a decade and a half, essentially, with some minor nice seasons in here and there where they've largely been disappointed. They've never had a season like this because nobody does. And that's where, it's so bad that it can seem like just that there is no hope. There is hope. You would have liked their bad season to be Florida-ish, like 6-6, 5-7-ish, not 2-10. But it is what it is, and that's why I think you don't – when people have questions, real questions about you as a coach, as a head coach, because how can you not when you go from 13 wins to 2? You can't then go and fire these 2 coordinators and a receivers coach. You're probably going to fire a few more, and then replace them with hope. Like, replace them with, I hope he can coach at this level. I hope he can prove that he belongs at this level. Nope. You got to replace them with guys you know belong at this level. And you've got to say to your fans, administration and Mike Norvell, we are doing everything we can. If it fails, it's not because we were cheap about it. And Florida State, again, has never been cheap about assistant coaches. We went and got the absolute best people that Florida State could get. Because they did not do that in 2019. They couldn't. They went and hired a group of 5 coach who had just taken his team to the Cotton Bowl. It's great. But then he hired a bunch of guys that weren't exactly on the radars of Texas A&M and South Carolina.
Ugh.
Well,
Two weird schools to reference there. But yeah, I get it.
You know what I mean? But, that's what you got to go get. You got to go get guys that other schools are envious that you just signed those guys. Like, wow, that's a really good hire. That's a good hire. That's going to be tough. That's what you've got to do. Nobody was going, oh, man, did they get Fuller? You're telling me Adam Fuller, oh, great, we got no shot now. Or, oh, my gosh, they got Atkins? Well, Atkins is going to be the OC now?
People were nervous that Alex might gone to Athens. I think apparently the rumor was like Kirby might have been kicking the tires on him.
Oh, what, is the O-line coach?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about the coordinator spot specifically.
Okay.
And Atkins was, he did yeoman's work turning this offensive line into what it was his first 4 years. But then it became, as we all saw, an abject failure in 2024. Yeah. So, he doesn't, that's fine. I know they were worried. We all thought he was a much better offensive line coach than he turned out to be. But, you can go make a hire that people get worried about, whether it comes to fruition or not. And people are like, if it doesn't work out, like I'm sure some fans in the Big Ten were like, oh, man, Wisconsin's now going to have a good offense? That's not going to be fun.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't work out. That happens, right? But they went for it. They went and got a really good offensive coordinator and tried to get him to work at Wisconsin. It ain't going to work. They need to run the ball 50 times a game. That's just what Wisconsin is. But, by God, go make a hire where other teams are envious. Not just, an AAC team is upset that you took their coach. Go get a guy that SEC fans are like, wow, that's a good hire for them. It's Florida State. I just want to keep reiterating that, everyone. It's Florida State. We are not talking about the Rice Owls or Fresno State. This is the real FSU, man. This is one of the best programs in the United States and has been my entire life. My entire life. There might be 4 teams in the country that have had more 10-win seasons my lifetime than Florida State has. And that's because of the last 10 years has been so up and down. This is one of the blue bloods. It deserves better than group of 5 coaches at every position group. Go get you someone that can coach and bring in players. They're out there, I promise. And a lot of them would crawl to Tallahassee. As long as you pay them what you got to pay them. And I'm done. Andy Reid might want to go coach college football, man.
Why not? Make the call.
Yeah, he's got to be tired of all this winning. They just lost. They lost there for the first time this season.
Finally.
Yeah, they lost to the Bills. Big win for the Bills. But, yeah, so he might get tired of this and want to go do something else.
All right. I was tired of not doing anything for the last few days. Let's go and talk to the head football coach. Press conference, 11:30. Looks like we're just going to get Mike. We would get the coordinators, but they're no longer employed by the university.
That's right.
Maybe we'll get Papuchas? I don't know, but I think we'll just get Mike, which is fine. Yeah. It's Charleston Southern, everybody. 4 more shows coming your way this week. Live show, Corey? You want to do a live show this week sometime? Maybe Wednesday? Maybe 6 p.m. Eastern?
Sure, sounds good. Sounds good.
Do a mailbag as well.
Because we probably won't do one next Wednesday, right? Because it's the day before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I'm probably going to go back home again.
So we might take a couple of days off next week. So, yeah, if we want to do the last live show of the season.
Sad.
I know. Or we could do a live show like the first part of the Florida week.
All right, I'll figure something out.
And not one this week. It's up to you, buddy.
Well, maybe we'll tape some shows just so we have spread out at least maybe 4 out of 5 days. I don't want to say a couple days off next week. That sounds like we're slacking. It's the Gator game, man.
Yeah, you're right.
How many Florida State? That's going to be. I can tell you that's going to be an over. Well, we can't. I was going to say over under like Florida fans in the stands, so we can't. Here's
the thing though about that, and we'll approach that more as the game gets closer. A lot of it depends on how this Saturday goes for the Gators because they are playing Ole Miss. If they lose again,
don't gag Lane.
They might. He might. It's Ole Miss, man. If they win, they're in the playoff almost assuredly. But Florida's not going to roll over, especially at home. But if Ole Miss wins that game, then Florida is 4-7, right?
Yes.
Or 5-6, 4-7, I think, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, man, I don't know how many Gator fans are going to come up to travel to watch their losing team play Florida State's losing team. There might not be a lot of Florida State fans either, but it's not going to be like Tebow's last game in Doak.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, Florida fans might want to come because maybe they've never seen Florida win at Florida State, but I don't think it's going to be like a madhouse of orange as they ride into the playoff. They've had a crap season too.
Dude, they're 5-5.
Yeah, so that we're thinking they'd be 5-6. So it's the difference between going 6-6 or 5-7. Yeah, big deal. They probably will have lost 6 times by then. I know I'm jinxing it, and they're going to beat Ole Miss by 4 touchdowns. But I don't know that even a 5-loss Florida team is going to send waves of people, like more than usual, to Doak. But I could be wrong. I know there will be plenty of seats available.
Yeah, I think maybe that's when it'll hit me. I don't even want to think about it because it's going to probably happen. So I think about it, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to get beat up after school, why spend period 6 thinking about the fact you're going to get beat up after school? Just enjoy period 6 and then go get beat up after school.
That's how life works.
Yeah. All right, Jeff Cameron Show, 1 to 4 o'clock coming up. Warchant.com, Ultimate Seminoles Sports Source, around-the-clock coverage. And again, 11:30 press conference, so check out warchant.com's Tribal Council around 11:28. Corey might have some funny little quip in the thread welcoming you as we get ready to hear from the coach. We'll be back again tomorrow, everybody. Thanks for listening. It's Wake Up Warchant presented by Vitamin Energy.